What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Ocast. Me and Connor McTighe, we took a little hiatus. We were recording some music, recording some new videos. We just had the Halloween special that came out, Intervention. Go check it out. We got the Rock Bottom Jam. We got videos of that coming out all month. So stay tuned for all of that good stuff. Today, on the world's largest, #1 Bible-based music podcast, we're talking about how to get paid to go to church. Which is kind of a snarky title. We're talking about, should church musicians get paid, or is it immoral for a music minister, choir director, singers, piano players, organ players, should they be getting paid, or is the compensation of good karma and goodwill and doing unto the Lord, is that enough? Is that going to really pay their bills? Well, I think you can probably tell what my opinion is on this. And what we got here is a nice little video that we're going to react to, and we might even look at some of the comments here, because I'm sure there's all kinds of musicians who are just outraged by this wonderful sermon that we're about to listen to.
Music, though, has always been a controversial issue, but it is a blessing to the Lord when done correctly. It is a curse when done incorrectly. Let me tell you, when we talk about spirit and truth, we need to have the Spirit of God in it, but there's some people with the Spirit of God who need to leave music alone. Bad music is worse than no music. There is an opportunity in the service for everyone to participate. It's called congregational singing. But don't think that God has called you to be a singer when you are tone deaf. That's not your gift.
All right, I want to stop it right there for a second. Also, apologies for the music. Somebody added some kind of background track to this, so it's a little bit loud. Clearly not an audio engineer. But the message is still intact. So this guy's saying, and they didn't include the preacher's name in this video for some reason, so if any of you guys know who this wonderful, bright gentleman is, please comment it in the comment section down below.
Because he is actually supporting a very underrated idea of musicians who are playing for the ministry to be paid properly.
Yeah, it's like really embarrassing, I guess, for churches to talk about this stuff, because then they're going to realize that they're probably taking advantage of a lot of these musicians.
Which they are.
So his first point here is well received, which is bad music is worse than no music. And I was going to say bad musicians are worse than no musicians. And the point there is, if you're not trying to pay people, if you're not trying to compensate them fairly for their work, you're going to get what you pay for.
Yeah, some days, some people didn't show up, and the choir sounded fantastic.
Oh, I'd love the services where it's like, 8 altos and 1 tenor and 1 bass, and that's it. Like, you got no melody to your song now at all. It's all kind of messed up and lopsided.
If I were, as an adult, a practicing Catholic, as an adult, I wouldn't go to the 12 o'clock mass or the 10:30 mass, because I wouldn't want to roll the dice on whether or not the right people were there. What I would want to do is just go to the 6 o'clock one, because I know the organ player's hot.
Right.
I know the organ player knows what they're doing, and I'd rather hear some good organ music for 1 hour and get out of there and go have some coffee and
That's
donuts.
what I'm saying. Good or bad music is worse than no music. So
this gentleman is definitely speaking truths here.
He's like describing your entire childhood. Now, out of those 3 different musician ministries, which one do you think was getting paid, or getting paid the most? What would you say?
None of them were getting paid.
Oh, okay.
There are those who are gifted in music, who have been given leadership abilities. I look in the scriptures and I discover that according to Nehemiah, the 13th chapter, they were actually paid from the tithe.
You guys get that? Nehemiah 13. The musicians were paid from the tithe. They didn't get a love offering, whatever that is. They got paid from the tithe. So let's continue.
Listen to this. Nehemiah 13.
You had to say it real slow for y'all, just so you could get it there.
Syllable for syllable.
As Lord, remember I did this. They had stopped receiving tithe and offering. They had put somebody named Tobiah to live in the storehouse. God, it was wrong, because the priest and the musicians and the doorkeepers, those who labored for the temple, had to go out and work in the fields, because they only could give spare time to the work of the Lord. And after a long day's work, they had to try to come into a choir rehearsal and give their best to the master.
So these guys had to work a bunch of other jobs and a bunch of side jobs in order to get money. And then they're left with like 1% of their free time left to dedicate to the music ministry. So what kind of quality of music and worship, praise team, what kind of quality is your music ministry going to be at that point? So, and like he said, you'll find people that are really gifted that are willing to work for nothing. But in my opinion, those are the kind of people we want to see this video, right? So that these guys will stand up for themselves and know what they're worth.
While that is true, I think that you're also missing another thing that he's saying in there about how there are people who were laboring for the ministry. So he's not specifically talking about the musicians only.
Right.
The other aspect of this, and even recently, I have a gentleman that I have worked with who has told me on numerous occasions that he is not a very religious man, but he does believe in doing good deeds, and he does believe in giving back to the community, and he does believe in some sort of higher power.
But you don't think they would do a better quality of work if they knew they were getting taken care of by
no,
somebody?
they definitely absolutely would.
Like, I used to work for a church that would do these plays, and they would do plays and plays and plays and plays and plays, and they'd say, all right, we're going to pay you this amount to do the plays. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And then they would change all of the terms of the service. Then it went from a 50-hour gig to a 150-hour gig, and so that essentially is cutting your paycheck in thirds. So you're getting 33% of the wage that you actually agreed to. This is the kind of stuff churches do, and then they tell you, well, you should have the heart of a servant. You should want to do unto the Lord.
Stop asking high caliber musicians to assist in your ministry if you're not willing to pay them their worth.
Right. And some of these guys went to college to get their bachelor's degree or their master's degree in music, and they've spent tens of thousands of dollars getting degrees so they could work a volunteer job at 7 o'clock in the morning every Sunday. Like, guys, you need to learn how to stand up for yourself. I'll make it real easy for you. Here's what I do. You talk about charity and having a good heart and all of that. I'll make it real simple. This is what I like to do. If anybody in the church, in the congregation, hires me for a gig, right? Like, oh, play at my birthday party or play at my grandmama's funeral or something. I will give them a discount. So I'll charge them less.
Give me a cut of her estate.
What? No, but I'll charge them less. I will literally charge them less of what I would charge any normal person that walks up off the street or sends an unsolicited email and says, hey.
But you better come right.
Player. Right. Well, you still have to pay for that work, but you wouldn't have to pay as much as somebody that's not in the church. So that's me giving back to the church.
And it wasn't working. So I took Tobias' stuff and I kicked it out. I told the people, return the tithe and the offering, and now they're getting paid. Who's getting paid? The preachers, the singers, and the doorkeepers. I don't know, but there must be a verse I've not yet read where there's something spiritual about dogging our own people.
Right.
We will pay a plumber top price to fix our toilets, but want to argue about giving a preacher a gratuity or a musician some money to do what they do. Let me tell you something.
All right, as a tradesman,
let me tell you.
As a tradesman, I'm going to call BS on this from Jump Street.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Because
what about plumbers getting paid, or about their
about any tradesman at a church getting paid properly?
Well, I think he means in general. You'll pay a plumber, but
no, they won't
pay a musician.
No, they won't. Trust me, I've talked to a.
You're saying plumbers have the same plight as church musicians.
They have a worse plight.
Oh, and they don't have a Bible scripture verse to back them up, you know?
Yeah, because the plumber that you call might not even come to your congregation. He's a friend of some guy who goes to your congregation, and you call him to come fix the toilet, and then when he's like,
"Oh, I see what you're saying,"
and then when he shows up and he's like, all right, well, yeah, like I paid this much money.
Here's an invoice.
Here's an invoice.
A what?
You should have a servant's heart. All right. I mean, or you could have a bunch.
I just spent 3 hours digging through all the congregation's fecal matter.
Listen. Your septic tank could bust at any second. I mean, honestly, it's probably going to bust in another 3 months if I don't come back. You do whatever you want, but I'm not coming back a second time if you're not going to pay this invoice this time.
And again, how many of that congregation is willing to go back to that church when it smells like a busted septic tank?
I don't know. Only the Lord knows.
I think that's a perfect allegory for the quality of some of these musicians in these churches out here.
Malachi chapter 1. Write that one down. Malachi 1.
Malachi 1.
God is mad at Israel. Why is he mad at Israel, preacher? Because they were going into their flock, finding cross-eyed sheep, crippled lambs, and bringing that to God for sacrifice.
There's a lot of cross-eyed musicians.
Listen.
Why should I accept it? Malachi 1 goes on to say, as nice and as powerful as your earthly rulers are, I'm a great king.
Pause.
And I deserve...
Why does God want all these dead sheep? What's he want them for?
No, that was back in the day. He doesn't want them anymore.
Why did he want them then?
So what is it that's happening when we require musicians to go and work at Walmart for 8 hours a day? And then they're supposed to come at the end of a workday, set their family aside, and spend their spare time working with a choir and planning the music program of a church.
They're going to get yelled at for being late.
But if in fact it represents a great God, then we ought to position people to use their best time and their best talents in the service of God. Truth is that God has positioned some people with the gifts and talents necessary and the desire to spend their time blessing the people of God and blessing Him through music ministry. Do you not know that God spent so much money on that service that you can't calculate its worth? Even the high priest wore a vesture that was worth a king's ransom.
Okay, so this is instantly contradictory of any of Jesus's original teachings. One of the big.
Well, keep in mind, this came before Jesus. Now he's talking about Old Testament. Jesus came along and tried to reform.
Well,
so
I'm sorry, but we live in
I'm just saying.
But we live,
Reminding
but
the folks.
no, but these are supposedly modern Christians.
No, sure,
that
yeah.
are having this discussion right now. One thing that Jesus did say in the New Testament was that if more than 2 people are there to congregate, then a service can be held.
Sure.
So it doesn't matter if it's in a field. It doesn't matter if it's in an alleyway. It seems a bit contradictory for somebody to be preaching the ministry in a sense where he's talking about all of the lavishness of it.
He's trying to get deep. He's trying to get deep and say, "Oh, God spends infinite amount, and you're worried about paying $200."
He's only getting surface deep, because I feel like at the heart of it all, this minister is really just bragging about the fact that he pays his musicians.
Well, I mean, look at this church. I mean, you got projectors in the background, you got wireless microphones, lapel mics. Here's the point, though: if you have a church that's bringing in millions of dollars in tithes and memberships, and you're not paying your musicians, it's a little bit messed up.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
But we want to run church operations with people who do church as a hobby. It's not biblical. It's not biblical. Paul goes so far as to say, come on, use common sense. You don't muzzle the ox that treads the corn. Those who labor for the temple should be paid of the things of the temple.
So I think there he's just saying, don't make it harder for people that are already putting in a lot of work. You know.
Yes.
You could be helping them out. You could be doing them a solid. And again, clearly a church this size, you know, because Jesus also says, you know, render unto Caesar's what's Caesar. So he's not 100% about, you know, just be poor and be broke all the time. You know, pay what your due is, right? Pay your dues, I guess, in a sense.
It's easy to say when you got 4 old women bringing 40 pounds of potato salad for a congregation of 300.
And an investment in human resources when it comes to the things of God pays off in great dividends. Jesus had positioned with him 12 full-time workers. But the idea is, if we're going to get the best, we've got to position people.
He had 12 disciples. A lot of them quit their jobs when they started following him. They just stopped doing their jobs.
But here's the question. Did any of those 12 disciples spend $80,000 on a piano performance degree?
No, I don't think they had colleges. Matthew, he was the tax collector. Now, he's a tax collector. Like, he's collecting taxes. He's doing his job.
That's generally what tax collectors do.
That's what they do. It's exactly what they do. One of them's a fisherman.
Right.
You know, I think it was Peter. Peter's a fisherman. Like, he's fishing out of the water and everything like that. Like, that's his entire livelihood. And Jesus is like, if you follow me. Jim Gaffigan even has a joke. Like, he has a joke about it where he's like, all right, so do I just, like, leave the fishing pole here? Or what do you want me to do? And he's like, no, you can bring the pole. But and that's,
I mean,
like,
we need to eat, right?
like, that's the joke that he tells, but it's like, I totally feed my family with this. And what happens in the Bible, what actually happens literally in the Bible is, I'm gonna die in like 2 years, and then like another year and a half after that, all you guys are gonna die the same way that I did. Like, that's totally what's gonna happen. But you're gonna look out for our families, right? I mean, yeah, like at the right hand of God. Like, I mean, like, you're gonna be up there with us.
I guess getting paid, $200 an hour doesn't really matter if you're going to be on a cross in a couple of years, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So they had nothing to lose at that point, Yeah, I think it's different nowadays. I think it's different when you have musicians.
I'd scrap the nails before I did that.
They invest an awful lot in their craft, and their parents spend an awful lot of money on music lessons to get their child to be a talented, good, focused, educated with the music theory and all that. And you got people playing in churches that don't even know how many key signatures there are. Oh, can we do this in E instead of E flat? Oh no, I don't know what's E.
And it's like you're speaking a foreign language to them.
What's their best? What else? What else is true? What else is true?
And that is it.